Okay, we're live again. Hopefully this is working. I'm going to have them check our audio. Our audio went out earlier. Um, check in now, John. So hopefully we'll get started again. Sorry about that, Dan.
I could start singing.
We'll start all over. We'll just we'll dump the old one and start this one. So welcome from Michigan, where you're sequestered in your cabin up there. So
Yep, pretty nice place to be. I'm sitting on my back porch. You might hear the wind chime. Hope it doesn't distract.
yeah.
But
Okay. So we're going to try this again and see what happens. So
yeah,
tell us a
beautiful
little bit about
Michigan Woods, Poly One Specialty Inks version of the Red Green Show. Today we're going to just introduce you to Silicone Simplified, basically a 101. A little talk on what silicones are about and how we print them. Really, our purpose here is to give a high level introduction, not to go into any depth necessarily, unless answering your questions, and we'll get farther into silicones as we do more of these. So a little background: silicone inks were really introduced to the market in the early 2000s in response to brand level restricted substance lists in California Prop 65, which was really geared towards more sustainable and eco compliant inks in the apparel industry. At that time, they were mostly printed on flat tables in Asia as it was introduced, and most of that was because of the really short screen life that they had. So if you fast forward to today, with Poly One Specialty Inc.'s launch of Zodiac Libra, which is the first full line of silicone inks that include a mixing system with pigments and toners, adhesive and migration stop, specialty bases, and additives. And these silicone inks are really uniquely suited for synthetic, athletic apparel. If you think team jerseys, running shirts, yoga, compression wear, anything you want a optimal feel from your ink, as well as some of these other attributes that they offer, which include low temperature cures. So standard cure on Libra silicone inks is 270 degrees, but can go down to as low as 250. And this is really about controlling migration without having to flash print a bulletproof embellishment that you might have to with less opaque systems. This product, the silicone product, has extreme stretchability. So as Johnny's running downfield and gets tackled, that number on his back is going to stretch upwards of 300, 400, 500%, and then recover without cracking. With this type of a material, and we'll go into it a little bit later, a thermosetting material, you also get great wash resistance. And with that, also, silicones are known for a really soft, buttery hand with great drapeability.
So let's start with, how are silicones different than other inks?
Yeah, so to differentiate these, when we teach someone about without silicone experience about how to work with these inks, we rely on a combination of the techniques that are already used in plastisol, water-based, and discharge printing, but silicones must be catalyzed to cure. And then once you catalyze the ink, we can kind of think about it like a discharge. We've got about 8 hours to work with it of open time before the silicone becomes unusable. That's on press and on screen when it's subjected to heat. If you keep catalyzed ink that you're going to add to your press, like you would with high solids, covered and in a cool place on the floor, you'll get upwards of 72 hours plus of open time. Just keep it covered, keep it cool. We treat silicones printing with screen management, heat management, and cleanup techniques more similar to high solids acrylics. We want to flood up for short breaks. If we're walking away for lunch, 30 minutes or more, we're going to clean that image area out and flood back and then clean the image area out. Just keep that ink in a bulk form we'll come through and we'll print a double stroke and we'll be back in business after 30, 45 minutes. Whenever you stop, good practice with any water-based or silicones, park those hot pellets half index. Don't just let them sit under the ink and bake the ink, or you're going to be curing up ink. It's a thermosetting ink, as I said before. So once the catalyst and heat activates the ink, there isn't going back. I like to think of it as spaghetti noodles. I like the KISS principle: keep it simple, stupid. And that's for me. If you take a pot of spaghetti and you boil the noodles with a fork, and you pull it out and you put it on a plate, you put a fork through it, and you move that around, all those noodles are moving against each other, no problem. Give it 5 minutes, try to do that again, and everything sets up into this mass of one single noodle. Those are all cross links. That's thermosetting. There's your chemistry for the day.
Oh boy. So one of the questions is, can you use Nylabond as a catalyst? Did you go over that, or?
Easy answer, no.
Okay.
Silicone chemistry is different from any other chemistry, and you cannot interplace any other chemicals. No retarders from water-based or from plastisols. No plasticharge. No Nylabond. No. But that's why PolyOne's complete product line of silicone additives and bases is there to help you out.
Okay, well, so let's go to how are the silicone ink, similar to other inks?
Yeah, so good question. Let's be real. The more you have to conform to a product, the less value that product has for you. If I've got to set up a totally different press to run silicones, then I'm really going to need to have a need for it. So my challenge is always make something that you can drop into your process and start printing. And this is what we have with Zodiac Libra. I really have very little changes that I make to process when we're converting from plastisols. So very similar screens, mesh emulsions, chemistries, chemicals for cleanup and cleaning during operation and after. Our production tends to be the same. But because of the opacity and the great printability of these inks, you generally print about 30% less than plastisols. So you don't have to build up print flash print to get that coverage and color masking. We're using standard emulsions, recommend 20% emulsion over mesh. Don't worry about degradation or breakdown with silicones. It's a very easy, non-harsh ink to work with. For squeegees, a 70 durometer will get you a long way. And we use a lot of triple durometer squeegees, 62, 90, 60s, or 62 is one of my favorites. But that is recommended for most printing. Angle of squeegee, 15 to 20. Speed is pretty standard. But what we do is we double stroke every screen. So if I'm going to print, a white underbase, these are really printable inks. So I'm printing all my underbases with 30 psi pressure, so I can clear that white through a 110 or 125 or 140 with just 30 psi of pressure on that squeegee. And then colors, I typically go 160, and it's the same thing, real low pressure. Just transfer that and lay it on top of the garment, so you can really get the benefit of that opacity without sacrificing anything that you might by having to drive it into the fabric, like adhesion with other technologies.
So this question, you said 110 to 160 mesh. Can you go higher or lower in the mesh counts?
Yeah, absolutely. We've printed upwards of 305s, and when I'm printing, big particle flake glitters, etc., I'll print 40s or 80s. When I'm printing with the barrier black, if I have adhesion issues or the migration stop black, If I have adhesion issues or really difficult to control dye migration fabrics, I'll lay down an 83 or a 110 first, and then go up higher so I don't have to, have that real heavy hand.
Another question here is, I print 100% plastisol. Why would I want to convert my business to silicone?
Yeah. So if you're not going to convert because you're eco-conscious, which, hey, if it's not paying the bills, then it's really got to be something that's coming from the soul. It's really about differentiation. In a market full of plastisol printers, to have a different option to give to your customer when they're given a choice and want something that feels like an upgrade. And when you go to buy your next truck at the superstore, that LT or LTZ model sure feels and looks a lot better than the LTs. So this is one of the things that, and you can upcharge this pennies per print. So we really get a product differentiation. And if you're the only printer in town that offers that, it just helps you sell that. We also, and another thing just to keep in mind, we've converted some really big plastisol printers that are printing on polyester, dye sublimated polyesters. And they've said over the years that they've gone from 30% failure due to dye sublimation because of the high heat required to 3% or 0% because you can really control that dye migration.
That's quite a difference. Oh, we have a question here. This is a fun one. Can I print wet on wet?
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't recommend it for average print operations. Silicones do tend to pick up on the back of the screen when printing wet on wet. And while you can do it, and we've done some really kick butt prints, you have to use high mesh, high control of your heat in the process so that you're actually flashing with a hot palette, a very thin amount of ink and blending. But I wouldn't recommend it unless you are really in control of your process. And then if you are, give me a call because we're going to come out. We're going to have some fun on press.
Oh, great. I have in the feed here, we have a question. Does humidity and heat affect the printing process on press?
Yeah, so we've printed these all around the world, and that is absolutely the case with silicones. The only places I have problems with Libra silicones are in the harshest conditions, when we're printing in 115 degrees Fahrenheit, or sometimes I'll see it with really dry conditions, under 10% room temperature humidity. We offer additives, retarders, for those situations so that you can get your 8 hours of screen open time for a regular production run.
I got so we have a question here. Can I print silicones with other ink technologies?
Yeah, you sure can. Do you want them to stick? No.
Can and should are two different words, aren't they?
Yeah, it depends on what you want. Now, if you keep, so the cure temperatures and flash temperatures of silicone are really broad. I can flash down to 250 with a long enough flash, and I can go all the way up to 380, 400 degrees. They're not, real bothered by that bandwidth, but nothing sticks to silicones, which is great for silicones, but nothing sticks to silicones, which isn't so great for other ink technologies. So, we've got some folks out there that do some shows that are printing some foil with water-based adhesives and some silicone and some plastisol just to show that you can. I would just say keep your art separated, and then you'll be fine.
All right, we got a question on the line here. Let's see, what hot melt powder works best for silicone heat transfers?
That's a great question. I'll let you know when I offer it. No, it's that one goes right back to that last question. Nothing sticks to silicones.
Right.
So there are a few out there, and you're definitely get in touch with me if you're interested in this. But right now, I don't. There's not anything on the market that'll really pass 5 Melee washes for brand level stuff. But if you're not concerned about that, then I can recommend you something. Just get in touch
Perfect.
with me at dan.solomon@poly1.com.
Well, Dan, either we're not getting questions or there's everybody, or you're explaining it very well. So I'm going to hide this one here. Now, is there anything you want to recap or anything? So, I mean, we went over the basics of how it's similar. One thing I want to convey here is that when we started working with silicone inks and Dan came in, I had never really worked with a silicone ink, and I saw one of our distributors was carrying one at one time, and I think Dan had something to do with it. And it seemed to print pretty well, but from time to time I could see some problems on press every once in a while. I was really impressed when I finally got to try this on our automatic and on our manual. I felt like once you have it mixed and you get it on the press, you're just screen printing. That's all you are. You just a regular screen print. Only you have some advantages. Sometimes you don't need a white. You just put the color straight on, wet on wet. It's fantastic, and I think it's something that people should try.
Yeah, I think it's one of those inks that people aren't as familiar with, and so there's this inherent fear about something that may require change. So, what we're trying to do as much as possible is just challenge you to buy a quart of it and start printing. Buy a quart of ink and then some catalyst too, or you're not going to have good results. But yeah, it really is something that I think I said earlier with manual printers, that are really having to force plastisol through a screen. This just floats, floods, prints, transfers really nicely, and I'm really pleased with this product line. We have a lot of breadth in this product line to offer specialties, matte clears, gloss clears, adhesives, super shiny, glossy coats. And we'll get into that as we do this a little bit more. But, again, this was just kind of introductory. Let's get you comfortable with maybe a new technology, or maybe you've just heard a little bit about it and wanted to hear more. And sign back in as we do some more.
I've got two more good questions.
All right.
One has to do with the crock.
Yeah.
How is the crock, and if it's if it's substandard, how do we increase the crock resistance?
Yeah, so I said earlier that silicones have great wash resistance without color transfer, and that's true. If you think about silicones in use, think about a heavy rain jacket, a rubber coated rain jacket. Generally speaking, that's silicone, and when it's wet, that crock just slides right over. But when it's dry, it's a bit softer than plastisol. And so what we've done with this is we've offered a matte clear and a gloss clear overprint that we just put a really fine layer, 200, 180, 230 mesh over that. And then when you dry crock it, that fabric actually picks up the clear
Right.
and not the color.
Okay,
So
here's the second good one. Okay, and that we didn't cover this, I don't think. Shelf life. So address shelf life before you catalyze and after you catalyze.
yeah, very stable ink technology. If you don't know me, I've been in the silicone world for 25 years. These bases are very, very stable. What we say is you have 12 months of shelf to stability when it's uncatalyzed. Once you catalyze it, much like discharge, you start a little timer in the back of your head and you say, okay, anything that's on press, I'm just going to watch and I'm going to use it until it starts gelling up. Sometimes I'll just come through and I'll see some gels on the side just because they haven't been mixed into the bulk of the ink. I'll just put that at the back of the screen. As long as I'm getting a good print, keep printing with it. I throw out anything that's on screen when I'm done with it because it's been subjected to heat, and I don't want to put that back into my bulk container of catalyzed ink because then I'm going to sacrifice that. If I keep that bulk container, my refill container of ink that's catalyzed on the floor covered next to it, or someplace covered next to it, you're going to get 72 hours out of that, no problem. And further, a lot of shops have actually bought small refrigerators and they store covered silicone inks in the refrigerators and get even better pot life of the catalyzed material.
I have a question here from Facebook. What fabrics would you not print on? He goes, would you print on cotton, for instance?
Yeah, so it depends on how you're set up. We just did a 17,000 piece run on 100% cotton, but we had a hot iron to use. So, and when you do that, you use it a little bit differently than you would with a plancha screen, what they call it, in the South, or just a fiber mat down screen, because because it's a thermosetting material, you have to catch it before it completely cross links. Um, I don't stay away from any fabric. The only thing I sometimes have issues with are some fabrics or rain repellent nylons that have some chemistry that doesn't work with silicones, which are amines and sulfurs. If I can't get adhesion to it, then it's not the right substrate. If you have the capabilities to heat stamp or hot iron with a Teflon screen, then I don't stay away from anything.
And as
Even
with
manual printers, I've had manual printers that just take a piece of Teflon, they run their underbase, and then they take a piece of Teflon and just a garment iron and run that over, and it basically is just pushing those fibers down and fusing them down.
and as with any of our inks, we always tell you to, if it's an odd fabric you've never printed before, always test it. Take it, print it 2 or 3 days before production, wash it, see what happens.
Yeah, and there's always a spot on a garment, even if it's a really expensive one. We had a printer that was printing on some yoga wear that was really expensive, and so we just told them to, find the inside seam where you're not going to see it, and just print a little bit there, or even just take a little swipe with your fingernail, throw it down the dryer, and see if you get adhesion.
I think we're about 22 minutes. If we go too long, he says, "Oh, one more question. When do you use a barrier black?"
So if we can control the migration with, oh wow, I've got a huge pileated woodpecker on my bird feeder right now. Sorry, squirrel. Oh, there's its mate. Oh, if we, sorry, you got to ask that question again.
Barrier black.
Barrier black. Only on the worst sublimators or really bad low energy, like the digi camos. If you can print that white on top. And one of the interesting things about silicone, we've had customers that have called and said, "Hey, I just failed this batch. The sublimation is coming through. Did you use a barrier?" "No." "Well, you should have, but let's check it out." We'll come by 2 or 3 days later. They pull the shirt out of a box, and it's a completely white or colored print. It looks great. Silicones transpire vapor, so sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes that dye migration will continue to work its way through the ink, and then it is a good print. But I use it with any of just the lower activation energy dyes.
Gotcha. Well, Dan, I appreciate you being on today. We don't want to go too long. We want people to watch this after the fact, and we'll answer any questions we didn't get to today later. So watch for that. Any departing words, Dan? Enjoy
No,
your time in Michigan, and
yeah, it's the Audubon Society here. I got to go chase around some birds, but no, it's great to be able to see y'all. And hey, this is crazy times, and we're all in this together. And happy to be able to get a little FaceTime with y'all, and just be well, be safe.
I like you use the word y'all. Good job.
Yep.
All right, guys. Hey, everybody, wash your hands and keep your hands away from your face. Let's get well together. We'll see you. Thanks.